welcome to another Spotlight video. Tonight I have a very special guest, Pierre Chapelan from Montreal. Pierre, from my understanding, your father was a tattoo artist.
Yes, my dad is a tattooer, retired now, but he started in the 80s working. Yeah, I think he was the number 12 tattooer professional in France, part of the French Association. So very few tattooers back then. He was working in our house, so he actually took over my room to start tattooing. And and then that's how it began. Yeah, I kind of watched him work, every night. It was because he had another job. The tattooing was just at night, so every night I would sit down and watch him work.
So your earliest
Yeah.
memories of seeing tattoos was actually your father tattooing.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, yeah. He actually started working by hand, like he was doing hand pokes, tattoos, and stuff. And then he saved some money and then bought some equipment at Jet French company Bruno in Paris, which was very expensive back then. Like a power supply was like over $1,000. So just yeah, it was very expensive. But he managed to get his equipment and started working.
Wow, that's really expensive.
Yeah.
So, being that you grew up around tattooing, did you have ideas you were going to be a tattooist at an early age?
No, I think like most kids, you don't want to be like your father type of thing at some point, right? So now I wanted to be a photographer for wildlife animals because I love those magazines. And then, it really, I mean, I didn't know I wanted to do it till I was going to, the first time I went to Filip Leu house when my dad was getting tattooed there because we were living about an hour and a half from them. And then that's when I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. If they met Philip, it just changes you. And then, on the way back, I said to my dad, I said, I think I want to tattoo as well. So he said, well, you have to be serious about it. And that's how it started. Yeah. Philip gave me the push.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah. I always said, if you're a plumber and you meet Philip, you'd be a better plumber. You're just a better human being after all. He's just, that's just who he is, Yeah.
Can you tell me how old you were when you went to Filip Leu's shop with your father?
So that was 88. I was 12 years old. Yeah, 12 years old. Yeah. And so we would go there quite often because my dad got a bunch of tattoos by them. Yeah. So it was a good trip, and it was also what bounded. Like I mean, as I was saying before, I didn't want to do what my father was doing, but then I was so proud watching him getting tattooed and talking about tattoos and realizing, okay, he's part of a community, he's part of something very special, and that it really attracted me. And then we got to discuss, stuff that we learned through, watching Philip work and stuff on the way back in the car. So it was a special, very special moment for us at that, those period of time.
I can imagine the drive home from Filip Leu's shop that you and your father would both be filled with all kinds of inspiration.
I think my dad got so inspired as anybody that meet the family. And then he said, let's try to, he wanted to do something special for us as well. And it worked. And I thank him for that.
So when did you actually end up getting your first tattoo?
1991. So 1991, I was 15 years old. And that's when I really, really wanted to start tattooing and getting tattooed. So my dad said, let's do it properly. So he brought me to England. We went to Mick Sharp's, just me and him. And I went to buy my first tattoo machine, telephone dial, micro dial actually. Got to get tattooed by my dad, got tattooed by Mickey while we were there. We made it a week. We went to see Kevin Shercliffe. We went to see Derek Campbell, Ian Redding and stuff. So that was George Bone, super special trip. And then when I came back from that trip, then, I started tuning machines. I made my father's needles and started working right away.
That's an incredible lineup of artists that you've just mentioned in the first couple minutes of this interview.
Yeah, and they all welcome us and me, as a matter of fact, like really, really good. And I mean, this is also what proved to me that this is what I really want to do. Like, people are nice, people. It's something special, So, and again, I repeat myself, but sharing that time with my father at when you're a teenager and you bond on something that strong, tattooing is that strong, it was meant to be, and I'm never gonna give up.
So how far were you into your apprenticeship before your father actually let you do your first tattoo?
So right away. So the first person I tattooed was my mom. and I did a rose on her, and that was not too bad actually for a first tattoo, I would say, because it's my mom. I was confident and stuff. The second tattoo was on my dad, way more difficult because my dad is a little rough and a little, he's when he teaches you, he's a little rough. So I started making one line and he was crooked. So he kind of screamed at me and then I was crying. So I couldn't see my second line. So the second line was even worse. And I actually threw the machine on the floor. I'm like, I'm done. So yeah, it was a hard experience. And then so I did my mom, my dad, and then my dad said, listen, you gotta practice. And back then there was no fake skins or whatever. So he says you have to be honest with your friends. Do small tattoos that you either can fix later on or cover. And so I was allowed to work in my bedroom at night. So I would start around 10 p.m. when my dad was home, and I would work till maybe midnight or 1 a.m. Then I would knock on the door, on the wall. My dad would wake up, come and see what I did. Didn't say a word. Would come back to bed, go back to bed, and then give me shit the next morning. Yeah,
I can actually relate to your story because I was
yeah,
10 years old tattooing in my bedroom when I first started
yeah.
doing tattoos, but I certainly wasn't knocking on the wall to get my father to come over and inspect the tattoo that I had just finished. That's really cool. That's really awesome.
Yeah, but I mean, at least because working, I was working on my friends. I was also working on some punk kids from the streets that that didn't have enough money to get tattooed by my dad. So my dad always said, charge them a little bit because otherwise it's a free tattoo for them. It doesn't mean nothing. So I would still charge them a really small amount of money so the tattoo has a value, and it would respect me for it. So let's say I would charge $20 and start working on them. So most of them wanted big pieces, but I was not allowed to. So I was doing little rats, drawing little things that they liked, and but I had a blast. And all those people that I worked at my beginning, whenever I go back to France and if they're still around, whenever I tattoo them, I don't charge them because they were there at the beginning.
Wow, that's really awesome. I respect that a lot.
Yeah, it's only fair, I think.
So your dad was lining up work for you to
Oh
do.
yeah, 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 100%. And they would try to get people from the street. They would talk on my behalf because they liked the fact that I was young. They knew my dad, so they were really happy to and stoked to get me customers. Like, hey Pierre, my friend wants to get that. So I was actually very busy. So it was nice. Yeah.
So early on, you were involved in a whole tattoo community and you were getting to know all kinds of different tattooists through your father.
Well, my dad brought me, so it started in '88. So we went to the first French convention, which was in Bourges, '88 or '89 maybe. So I got to meet his friends, and right, because they met me and I was 12 years old, they kind of took me like they were happy to see me because back then the convention was not like today, right? It was like girls walking with their boobs hanging out and mohawk and piercing everywhere, and it was just a little more rock and roll, right? And so they got to know me from 12 to most of them. Now we still talk and we still friends, all that stuff. So they saw me grow up, and they gave me tips that my father wouldn't give me, and then it was good.
So how long did you stay working with your dad in France before you went to Canada to start
So,
tattooing?
I worked from 1991 to 1993. And then 1993, Keith Stewart, right, who put on the first Montreal Tattoo Convention with Dan Alliston in 1993. Uh, One morning we had my father's shop, and I'm like, "Who's that guy in front?" And he had like a big dreadlock, and he was rough looking guy. And so the shop was closed. It was early in the morning, so I opened the door, and he introduced himself. He was from Montreal, Canada, blah blah blah, and he was putting on a convention, and then he invited us. So my dad said, "Well, my son can come." I'm like, he goes, "Of course." So then I came to Montreal and did my first convention as an artist, attending artist in Montreal in 1993. And then this is when I loved Montreal. I really was amazed by that city. So I didn't go. My parents went back to France. I stayed for 2.5 months, and the next year for the next convention, I met my wife, and I fell in love, and I wanted to stay, and that's what I did. Yeah,
So at a very young age, you started working in Montreal for Keith Stewart.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, again, it's a question. Maybe luck. Life is just was good to me. Uh, without too much experience, I got put on in the shop where it was so busy because there was not many shops in Montreal, and we were doing about 60 tattoos every day in that shop. And I was the young kid who was doing all the little ones, so I could do 10 to 15 tattoos a day. And you had to get them done, get them done, get them done. And Keith was really good at making me not fuck around, right? And like, you got to do this, use a five, use this, use this. And so I got to learn really quick a lot of skills because I would have to do Celtic, Haida, Ken Cameron Rose, then a tiger from the end of Reading, and then all that, like a Jack Reed Dragon on the ribs, for $160. But all that stuff, and I had to do it, from 11 to 11, 6 days a week.
So
Yeah.
when you started, did Keith have that take a number machine?
Yes, so that came a little bit later. That was insane. I mean, because I would come in. I had a scooter back then, a little scooter, and I would come in maybe at 10 in the morning, and it was already a lineup, right? We would open at 11, so people would come in the shop at 11 and would take a ticket, and then we would go in the front and say number two, number two. If number two was at the store, we would call number three, and number two had to take another ticket. Now it was number 47. We didn't care, so it was just boom, 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 and but being raised and being around all those people in Europe that I mentioned earlier, I, it wasn't enough for me. I mean, don't get me wrong, I loved it, but I was talking to maybe a little too much. Like, I wasn't the fastest tattoo artist. I was talking to my customers. They kind of, I was like, oh, that guy is nice. He's young and he's not, he's not a rough guy. So I started taking appointment. And Keith was so mad. He was like, "You're not taking appointment in my shop." And I'm like, well, he wants a back piece. I had no choice. So that's how I started doing custom work at Keith, and it kind of allowed me to do it. And I built a clientele, and he was really happy because wintertime would come. It was less busy, but I had all those clientele, which was good for the shop. And that's where I met Bill, and that's where I was roommate with Bill. I was roommate with Scott McEwen. I mean, and all those people that came through the convention that Keith put on. So it was amazing time.
So I'm trying to imagine
Yeah.
what it would have
Yeah.
been like for you. You were a young man, you were alone in a different country, tattooing like crazy in this busy shop. That must have been nuts.
Yes, and on my own. Like, I mean, yeah, because I mean, I traveled with them to the convention, but then they went back, and I was alone. So, I mean, but tattooing was good to me because I was so busy at Keith. He was just work, work, work. I was doing graffiti with Keith's son at night, so not too much sleep. But it was all about art, all about. Later on, I figured some other stuff because I was getting older. But at that particular moment, it was just work, 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 work. It was just unbelievable, unbelievable.
So as I sit here, I'm
Yeah.
still trying to imagine what it would have been like for you. How old were you at the time when you were there tattooing at Keith's shop?
I was 17. Yeah, 17.
You were not only young, you were surrounded by a whole new group of people.
Being from Europe, I didn't know Bill Baker back then. I met him there. I didn't know Scott McEwen. The magazine came after that, and but I was around all those people, and I got to learn from each one of them. you know. And I had the balls to ask those guys. At some point, I asked Bill. I said, "Could you teach me more? I want to learn more." And he took me to the word, and we were living together. So I went back up that night, and he's putting on a chin-up bar. I'm like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "You want to learn? This is how we start." And he made me do chin-ups like for 2 weeks, and I did them. It was just to pull my legs, but but I did it anyway. This is how eager I was. I wanted to learn, right?
That sounds
So
like a classic Bill Baker antic.
yeah, exactly.
So what was it like to return back home? You must have had, a head full of all kinds of new ideas and new experiences that you wanted to share with everyone back home.
Yeah. And the plan was to go back, right? And which I did, but I had my girlfriend, now my wife, but I had my girlfriend. As you said, my head was full of ideas. I thought I was a grown man right away and going back to live with my parents, so I just couldn't do it anymore. So this is when we had buddied with my dad because I was still his apprentice, of course, but I didn't want that. Like, I was already like too much ahead in my head. For me, I'm talking. So we had butted, and I said, "You know what?" So I said, "I'm out of here." Well, he said, if you pass the door, you're not coming back." So I gave him the fuck you, and I went and I left, and I bought a plane ticket to go back to Montreal, and I stayed. Yeah. Now we're good. We good now, and we will be good. But for a little while, it was a little. It was sad. That was the Michel. But he didn't understand that Michel Tattoo family, and he knows now. At some point, he was like, "What's going on?" But I needed that. I think he needed it as well. It was good for us to, and my life turned out to be okay in Canada anyway.
I guess if I put myself in your shoes, returning home, you would sort of be looked at the same way that you had left home, as the young apprentice. And after having all those new experiences in Montreal, working at Keith's shop, surrounded by all kinds of great artists, it would be rather difficult to go home to your old life,
Oh,
so to
exactly.
speak.
That's how I felt. I wish I could have channeled it and say, I learned that much and use it and get better. But, that's not what young people do most of the time. So, and it took me years sometimes to go, oh, I was around that guy. I should, but then you have so many influences that it's hard to choose, right? And then, and now I work with Dave Cummings at his shop now since I closed Mania. And we worked together back in 1997 till 2000 or something. And we had that talk where I said, I wish I would listen to what you told me all those years ago, because now I just realized what you were saying, and so, but my life I was fortunate enough to have all those things. It's like learning maybe so many languages that for a little while you talk like this, and then it gets together, and then you kind of make the difference, right?
So when you left
Yeah.
France, you went back to Montreal to work at Keith's shop, or where did you go?
Of course, I went back to Keith and then loved it. Always, I loved every minute of it. And at some point, not to get in great detail, but life it is what it is, and I felt like I needed something else. I was not really 100% where I was. So I went to Keith and I said, "Listen, this is what." Right away, as soon as it popped in my head, first I was very scared of telling him, and turns out that a walk-in showed up, and Keith said, "Hey, Chapelan, you have a walk-in to do." And as I'm walking towards the door to get the walk in, I stopped to Keith and I said, "Well, listen, the money I'm going to make with that tattoo, I'm going to save it. I want to open my own shop." And it just got out of my mouth. Oh my God, what did I say? So he looked at me, said, "Do the tattoo," which I did. And I was like, okay, the cat is out of the bag. So then that same day he came to see me. He's like, "Where do you want to open the shop here?" I said, "Well, I'd like to do it in Montreal, but I'll give you a year notice, blah blah blah. I'll open, And then he's like, "Okay." Then the same day he comes back, he's like, "What about Quebec City?" I'm like, "I like Montreal better." Then he goes back to his seat, come back a little while later. He goes, "You know what? Quebec is dying. You should open in Ontario." So it's pushing me further and further. So when he realized I really wanted to open in Montreal, 12 days after that day, he kicked me out. Yeah. So, which actually now I understand. If somebody at my shop would tell me I want to open my shop, I'd rather him to leave right away. To be honest, this is because it makes stuff easier. I thought it was proper to give him a year, but it would have been awkward, obviously. So and then so he was a little pissed, as I understand, for a little while. And then towards the end we would talk, and I was wearing his shirts. I was always very proud of that I worked there, and at least we made amends before he passed away. So it was nice.
Do you think that Keith maybe felt threatened by you as being a young custom tattoo artist at the time?
Yes, but I don't think he had. Really, that's not my perception. Keith was not envious of all that stuff. He didn't really care. If he had his own way, he thought, and maybe there's some right in there. He thought, you're trying to change something that works. Like, don't give, like, this is crazy. Like, like my dad would teach me, like, don't tell everybody your secret because it's crazy. Or Keith would try to keep that, the way it was. And obviously we don't listen. We're young and stuff. He was right on many things. Uh, but no, I don't think he was threatened. He was just probably disappointed because he took me under his wing. I'd stayed at his house. I was young, remember that? So he was like a dad to me here. He was like my Canadian dad, right? So, uh, and maybe he felt like, I was, how do you say that? I went behind his back. I stabbed him in the back or something. That's what he believed for a little while.
Well, like they always
Yeah.
say, hindsight is
Yeah.
2020.
Oh, 100%. 100%. but that's life. You realize stuff after it's hard to know exactly what you should do or shouldn't. But I'm glad I did, because I mean, I felt, it's going to sound pretentious, but I felt at that moment in Montreal, I needed to do something because it was the right time, because it was not there yet. So I wanted to have a custom shop like I've seen Philip back in the days, like I was at my dad's. And I thought that was lacking, because customer would come in to get a ticket, would be, what do you want? Ah, get the fuck out. Right? Where I was, hey man, you want a coffee? Let's talk about the project, all that stuff. And that was not happening. So I knew if I was doing that, it would work. And it did. So that's why I really, really wanted to do it.
So obviously you saw, your own way or a different way to do business that you wanted to bring to your new shop.
And yes, and that's, I'm trying to live my life like this. Like, I'm going to use a sentence that Chris Awa told me, like, follow the fun, right? And I believe I'm doing that. Like, I'm trying not to. I'm trying to savor all the moments, and whenever I'm going to see that I don't know if I'm going to like it at that point, I'd rather quit or change direction before it comes to that point. This is why I closed my shop and went to Dave's. I mean, most people will go, why did you wait 30 years of that? Like, tattoo man, that would be 30 years. I don't identify myself with a number or a name. I want to be where I'm supposed to be for me.
I absolutely love
Yeah.
your perspective on that. So where did you open your first shop?
It's Tattoo Mania. The first one was open on Maisonneuve, which was at Papineau metro station in Montreal. So again, I put myself far enough from kids to not look like an asshole, but smart enough that I was the first one on the way when you get out of the subway. So I mean, does that make me an asshole or a bright guy? I don't know, but I did. So yeah, exactly. So I opened there. So because I didn't expect that. I mean, when he kicked me out 12 days later after I told him I was going to give him a year, I mean, I have to do something. So I didn't have a license back then. So a friend of mine drove me around Montreal and we looked at places. And the main reason I chose that location is because when I looked through the window, it was maybe 10 p.m. I looked to see inside the shop that was for rent. It was wood from maybe from 5 feet up from the ground was wood panels. And then it was stucco, white stucco. And it's exactly like my that shop was back in the days. So I was like, that's a sign, and this is the reason I rented that shop. Yeah,
What was the date that you opened up
yeah.
Tattoo Mania?
1997 in February. So my wife was pregnant. Everybody told me not to do it. It was like, what are you doing? Your wife is pregnant. You have a great job. You're making money, and I did it. Yeah,
I don't know about you, but I'd be shitting my
yeah.
pants.
But I mean, the first day I opened, the first tattoo I did was Betty Boop on some ladies. Charged her $100, and I don't think I had a not busy day after that. So it was
So
good.
when you turned the key to your
Yeah.
new shop or your first shop, tell me what you were feeling at that moment. It had to be exciting.
Oh, it's a long time ago, but I mean, I was thrilled. But if I look at the pictures now, people would laugh because I had an old IKEA desk that my wife had when she was a girl that I took from her parents. The flash with photocopies plastified with like nails, like not properly put on the wall. The couch was gross. I had nothing. I opened with a few $1,000s, right? Uh, but it was different. I mean, what was different is I had a smile on, and I wanted to do cool shit. So first people that came in, they were surprised that I was nice. I think so.
You had a lot of talented artists that came through your shop over the years. Tell me about some of the people that first started working with you when you opened Tattoo Mania.
A lot. I mean, everybody that worked at the shop, Dave, when Dave showed up a few months after I opened, it was just everything was getting into place. I mean, Connie Marnie said it the best in an interview that she was on, that I saw on YouTube. She said you could feel that something was boiling. Everything was interested. So we were sharing a lot. Dave was going to New York back then. He brought me to New York. I was working at Fat Cat in Queens and stuff. So all those moments I cherish a lot. But I always try to manage to have those moments as soon, like even now I want those moments. That's why I'm at Chris's shop today. So yeah.
So the first person that joined you at Tattoo Mania was Dave Cummings? I actually didn't know that. That's very interesting.
Yes, yes, he was. Within months. So Dave was working with Tony, and I was working with Keith. Both of them were enemies, right? They worked together back in the days, but something happened, and they were no longer talking, and they were just going at it, right? So me and Dave were not supposed to hang out, but we would again. So at night we would meet at Beefsteak on Saint Laurent Bar, have a few beers, talking about what tattooing was for us, and it was very exciting. Uh, and then when I opened the shop, I was partying one night, and I knew what day was leaving, so I went and rang at his door maybe at 3 in the morning, and I'm like, as I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? And then Dave opens the door, he's partying, he goes, hey man, and that night he goes, I want to work with you. So I said, let's go. So he packed the truck, I think the next day, and it was in, and yeah, so that's how it started. Yeah.
Was Tony upset when Dave came to work with you?
No, no, because Dave and Tony had such a strong bond that it was like a father and son, right? So Dave told me the truth, and when he came, he said, "Listen, Pierre, I'm going to work with. I feel like I want to work with you for a while, but just you have to know I'm going to go back to Tony whenever he needs me." And he said to Tony whatever he said, but he was fine with it. So me and Tony were really good. Like he never hated me, even though I was at Keith. I had no problem with him. And so he saw us do our own thing, and then Dave went back when just before even Tony needed him because he's a nice guy, and took care of Tony till the end. So yeah, and now I'm back with Dave. It's just life is amazing.
It is amazing. And if you live long enough, you're going to hit a few full circle moments.
Yeah, it is a full circle. True that.
So after all these years of tattooing, what does tattooing mean to you today, and why do you still love it?
Well, it means I'm very fortunate. It means, it means I can't fuck up. I mean, it means I have to. Again, I repeat myself, but tattooing made my life so good that I have to give back. I have to, I always I had so I'm doing conventions. I had a supply company. I manufactured needles. I wanted to know how does it work. I went to China. I went to visit all those facilities. So to me, tattooing is life. It's a continuous. Right? It's hard for me to say what I like. Like it's just life, right? I mean, every day is a new day, and then you meet somebody, you find some. I mean, it's hard to explain. I know I'm not retiring. I spoke to the bankers because I sold my house to get a new one. He said, "Well, you plan your retirement?" I'm like, "Well, it might feel unless I'm reshaping O'Brien, I'm not retiring, so I'm good."